Hey guys, how are you today? Quick rant before we dive into today's chaos. As some of you might have noticed, YouTube's algorithm has decided I'm not special anymore. Shocking, I know. So now if you don't like, comment, or do a little backflip in the algorithm's honor, this video might just vanish into the void, never to be seen again. Seriously though, even a hi or "this is wild" in the comments helps way more than you think. It tells YouTube, hey, people actually like this channel. Maybe don't hide it from everyone. That can really help push my videos out to a wider audience, not just to my subscribers. So if you enjoy these stories and want to support the channel, that's the best way to do it. Now grab a drink, get comfy, and enjoy the drama. You won't want to miss this one. This week, I married my husband, Alex. We're currently on our honeymoon, but instead of enjoying it, we're dealing with a headache because my mother-in-law is furious and blowing up our phones. So here I am on Reddit looking for advice. This story will make more sense if I start by first talking about my father and the kind of person he was. To put it simply, he was never really there for me. He was the kind of man who made promises he never kept, who chose his own selfish desires over his family time and time again. Throughout my life, he was more of a burden than a parent. He had multiple affairs, betraying my mother in the worst possible way, not just with strangers, but with her closest friends. He left her heartbroken, humiliated, and struggling to keep things together. While he continued to live recklessly on top of being unfaithful, he was terrible with money. He never planned for the future, never put anything aside for emergencies or for me. Instead, he spent whatever little he had on gambling, throwing away any chance at stability. At one point, he even went so far as to steal from my mother, taking the money she had worked so hard to save, and he gambled it all away without a second thought. If that wasn't bad enough, he also had a violent streak. One time he beat up someone at the bar so severely that he went to prison for a while. Because of everything Dad did, I never felt any kind of bond with him. There was no love, no trust, nothing that a father and child should have between them. The only real parent I had was my mother. She was everything to me, my role model, my best friend, the one person I knew I could always count on. She worked tirelessly to make sure I had a good life, picking up the pieces every time my father made a mess. I loved her more than anything in the world, and she was the only one who truly mattered to me. But life can be cruel. Just when I was about to graduate high school, my mother passed away. I lost the only parent I had ever truly known, the only person who had ever made me feel safe and loved. And what made it even harder was that I never even got the chance to share one of the biggest moments of my life with her. I had been accepted into my dream college, something she had always encouraged me to work toward. But she was gone before I could tell her, before I could see the pride in her eyes. That thought still haunts me to this day. Life was downhill after her death. While I was struggling with the pain of losing her, my dad didn't seem to care at all. He never mourned her, never shed a tear, never showed even the slightest sign that he had lost someone important. Instead, all he cared about was the money he was going to inherit. He assumed he would inherit everything she owned, as if he was entitled to it, despite all the ways he had hurt her. But my mom, being the smart and strong woman she was, had made sure that wouldn't happen. She had legally left her car and all the money in her bank account to me. That decision saved me, but it infuriated my father. He did get to keep the life insurance payout, which was already a huge sum of money, but that wasn't enough for him. He believed he deserved more. He actually thought I would just hand over everything my mother had left me, like it was his right to take it. But I wasn't that naive. I knew exactly who my dad was, and I knew what he would do if I gave him a single penny. He would gamble it away, just like he had done with every other bit of money he had ever gotten his hands on. So I refused. I stood my ground and kept what my mom had left for me, knowing that it was what she had wanted. By the time I moved out for college, my dad had already moved on with his life. He had a new, much younger girlfriend, someone who probably had no idea what kind of man he truly was. And once moved out, I realized that I had no reason to keep him in my life anymore. I pretty much cut off all communication with him because every time he called me, it was never to ask how I was doing or to offer any kind of support. No, the only reason he ever reached out was to beg for money. Can you imagine that? A grown man, a father, constantly asking his own daughter for money. It was pathetic. It made me realize even more that I had made the right decision by keeping my distance. I had lost my mother, the only real parent I had ever had, and I was completely on my own. But even so, I would rather struggle alone than let him drag me down with him. After cutting my dad off, I knew I had to become completely independent. I started working at a food joint while in college, earning my own money so that I wouldn't have to rely on anyone. I worked long hours, sometimes juggling shifts between classes, but I didn't mind. Every dollar I saved made me feel stronger, like I was taking control of my own life, something my father had never done for himself. I also made a promise to myself I would never contact him again. But, of course, my dad wasn't the type to just disappear. Over the years, he kept trying to get back into my life, especially after I graduated and landed a proper job. It was clear that he didn't suddenly want to reconnect because he missed me. He just saw me as a source of money now that I had a stable income. Although I had blocked his number and ignored his attempts to reach out, I made one small mistake. I had put my job details on my LinkedIn profile. That was all he needed. One day, after finishing work, I walked out of my office building only to find him standing outside waiting for me. He was drunk with his shirt wrinkled, his hair messy, and reeking of alcohol. The moment he saw me, he stumbled forward and started begging. He wanted me to loan him thousands of dollars, as if I just had that kind of money just lying around, as if I owed him anything, as if he had ever been there for me, ever supported me, ever done anything to earn my help. He needed that money to clear off his gambling debts. I refused without hesitation and told him that his debts were not my problem. But he didn't accept no for an answer. His begging turned into threats. He said that if I didn't give him the money, he would go to my boss and ask them for it. He was willing to embarrass me at my workplace, willing to humiliate himself if it meant getting what he wanted. But I wasn't intimidated. I looked him in the eye and told him firmly that if he so much as stepped into my office, I would make sure my boss called the police on him. I didn't want him anywhere near me, and I certainly didn't want him identifying himself as my father, because in my eyes, he wasn't one. He had never been a father to me, never helped my mom raise me, never acted like a real parent. I wanted nothing to do with him, and I made that very clear before walking away. Dad wouldn't stop yelling. He was drunk, loud, and completely shameless. People walking by started to stare, and I felt humiliated. No matter how firmly I refused to give him money, he just kept shouting, acting as if I was the one being unreasonable. It was exhausting, and deep down, I knew he wouldn't leave me alone unless I gave him something. So, just to get rid of him, I handed him a couple hundred. It wasn't much, but it was enough to make him finally go away. After that incident, I wasn't going to take any more chances. I immediately spoke to my building security and made sure they knew never to let him in if he showed up again. I also talked to my boss and explained the situation. Thankfully, my boss was incredibly understanding and reassured me that if my dad ever tried to cause trouble at work, they would handle it. That gave me some peace of mind, but I knew that as long as my father was around, he would never truly stop trying to worm his way back into my life. And I was right. When I met Alex, my dad saw it as another opportunity to take advantage of me. I had been very careful to keep my relationship private, never posting about it on social media because I knew my dad. I knew the kind of person he was, how he always looked for ways to manipulate and guilt-trip me. But somehow, he still found out about Alex. I don't know how he did it, maybe through distant relatives, maybe through people who knew me. But once he had that information, he tracked down Alex and started messaging him out of nowhere. He told Alex that he should be careful about marrying a gold digger like me. He painted me as some kind of schemer, saying I was just like my mother, someone who used people and threw them away after I was done. As if that wasn't enough, he even went on about my mother's money, twisting the story to make himself sound like the victim. He told Alex that I had stolen the money after my mom passed away, that I had run away with it without giving him his rightful share. He tried to make me look like I was the one who was greedy and selfish, all because I had refused to let him take what wasn't his to begin with. Reading those messages made my blood boil. I was extremely embarrassed that my own father had texted my partner and made up such blatant lies just to try and sabotage my relationship. It also made me realize that no matter how much time passed, no matter how much I distanced myself from him, He would always find a way to try and drag me down. Thankfully, Alex knows me well enough to know that it was all a lie. He did block my dad, and I thought that after that incident, he could never harm us ever again. Now, Alex and I had been planning our wedding for weeks, and everything was falling into place just the way we wanted. We had decided on a destination wedding, something intimate, peaceful, and meaningful to us. Neither of us wanted a big, extravagant event, and thankfully most of our family members were supportive of that decision. Most, but not all. Alex's mom, my future mother-in-law, was not happy. She had made her feelings about our small wedding very clear from the start. In her mind, a wedding wasn't just about the couple. It was about her getting to show off to all her friends and neighbors. She believed that we should have let her invite everyone she knew, even people Alex and I had never even met before. She wanted our wedding to be more about appearances, about impressing others. When Alex and I stood our ground and said no, she was furious. But instead of being upset with both of us, she decided that I was the problem. In her eyes, I was the mastermind behind everything. But she believed I had tricked her son into wanting a small wedding, that I was the reason he wasn't giving her the grand spectacle she had always dreamed of. The truth is, mother-in-law has never liked me. From the moment Alex and I got serious, she has resented me for one reason or another. Maybe it's because I have never sought her approval, never bent over backward to please her the way she expected. And that probably has irritated her even more, because she has had no control over me. She constantly goes out of her way to put me down every chance she gets. It's like she's always looking for something to criticize me, no matter how small. If I cook something for her and my father-in-law, she will nitpick every little thing. She'll act as if I've personally offended her with my cooking, comparing it to her own, and dramatically sighing about how I can never match up to her skills in the kitchen. And of course, she never stops reminding everyone that her son is going to suffer after marrying me, as if my cooking abilities somehow define my entire worth as a wife. But her issues with me don't stop at cooking. The biggest problem, according to her, is that my husband and I don't want children, at least not right now. Her mind, this is all my fault. She believes I'm the one brainwashing her poor son into not wanting kids yet. And she has told me multiple times that I owe her a grandchild soon, as if having a child is some kind of debt I'm supposed to repay to her. She has even gone as far as to say that if my first child isn't a son, she'll be very disappointed in me. The fact that she thinks she gets to dictate what happens in my body and in my marriage is beyond frustrating. The only saving grace in all of this is my husband. He has always taken my side and stood up for me. Every time his mother tries to put me down or make me feel small, he shuts it down. He makes it clear that our decisions are our decisions and that she doesn't get a say. But despite that, she never stops. No matter how many times he defends me, she still takes every opportunity to take a shot at me, as if she's just waiting for the day I'll finally break. Anyways, for our wedding, I had been very clear that for my side of the family, only some of my close cousins and relatives were invited. My dad, however, was not on that list. I didn't want him there, and I made sure everyone knew that, including my mother-in-law and father-in-law. They knew my history with him. They knew the kind of person he was. They knew exactly why I wanted nothing to do with him. So, imagine my shock when during the reception after our beautiful wedding ceremony, when everything was going perfectly, I suddenly saw him walking into our party. I froze. My entire body went cold as soon as I laid eyes on him. My husband and I looked at each other at the same time, both of us trying to process what was happening. Dad wasn't supposed to be here. How did he even know where to come? Who had told him? And then, to our utter disbelief, my mother-in-law got up from her seat and walked right up to him. I watched in complete horror as she shook his hand like they were old friends. They stood there smiling and chatting, as if this was some kind of reunion, rather than one of the most important days of my life being ruined. That was when I realized she had planned this. She was the one who had invited him. Before my husband and I could even react, before I could storm over and demand an explanation, my mother-in-law grabbed the microphone. With the most smug smile on her face, she announced to the entire wedding, "As a special wedding gift, I have invited the bride's father to be here with us today." I felt my stomach drop. My hands curled into fists as I stood there, too stunned to move. But she wasn't done yet. She then turned to me, her expression full of fake sympathy, and said, "I know you didn't want your father at your wedding, but I decided to invite him anyway because I truly hope that, no matter how terrible the history is between the two of you, you will find it in your heart to forgive your father. After all, he is your only living parent, and you shouldn't alienate yourself from him." I felt pure rage boiling inside me as I glared at my mother-in-law. How dare she? She had no idea what this man had put me and my mom through. The betrayals, the heartbreak, the trauma that still lingered. She had no right to go behind my back and invite Dad to my wedding, the happiest day of my life, when all I wanted was a stress-free, joyful evening. I looked over at my husband, and I could see the anger in his eyes. He was just as furious as I was. With a bright, self-satisfied smile, my mother-in-law handed the microphone to my dad. My heart stopped. Dad took the mic and started speaking. He didn't start with an apology. He didn't acknowledge the years of pain or the hurt he had caused. Instead, he launched into a self-pitying rant about how difficult it had been for him after my mom died. He talked about how hard it was to be a single parent, as if he had actually been one. He talked as if he had actually raised me, cared for me, or done anything for me after Mom passed away. He then admitted in the most casual way that he had made some mistakes in life, but that he had matured over the years and regretted the way he treated me. He continued his speech, acting like some poor, misunderstood father. He told everyone that I had held on to my resentment for too long and that I needed to let things go in order for us to start afresh, that I was being stubborn for not forgiving him. And then came the final blow. He said that he had done his best to do everything right as a parent, that I should be grateful for all the sacrifices he had made for me, that instead of cutting him off, I should have been thankful and forgiving for all that he had done. I could barely hear anything else after that. My blood was pounding in my ears. The nerve, the absolute gall of this man to stand there on my wedding day in front of all my loved ones and rewrite history as if I owed him anything. I looked at my mother-in-law, who was watching with a smug, satisfied look on her face, as if she had just done something wonderful. That was when I knew this wasn't just about my dad. She had done this to humiliate me, to put me in my place. Dad went on to announce that all he hoped for was that for my wedding day, I would leave all my hate behind and become a better person by forgiving him and making him a part of our lives from now onwards, as he would love to get to know me and my husband better. At that moment, before I could even process what was happening, my husband got up from his seat. Without hesitation, he walked straight up to my dad, snatched the microphone from his hands, and turned to face him with pure fury in his eyes. I watched as Alex leaned in and spoke to my father. I couldn't hear what he said, but whatever it was, it made my dad's face shift from smug confidence to shock. And then, loud enough for everyone to hear, my husband announced that my father needed to leave our wedding immediately. The room went silent. My dad stood there, clearly taken aback. It was as if he had genuinely expected my husband and me to just embrace him, to welcome him back with open arms after all these years. He had no idea how wrong he was. But, of course, he didn't leave right away. He tried to argue, saying something about how he deserved to be present for his daughter's wedding. My mother-in-law quickly jumped in too, rushing to his side in support. She tried to stop my husband, insisting that kicking my dad out was cruel and unnecessary. However, Alex didn't budge. He looked her in the eyes and made it very clear if my dad didn't leave on his own, security would be called. There was a tense moment of back and forth, my dad still trying to hold his ground, my mother-in-law desperately defending her grand gesture. But my husband didn't flinch. Finally, after realizing he wasn't going to win this, my dad gave up. He scoffed, muttered something under his breath, and turned to leave. I sat there shaking in quiet anger, watching him leave finally. I wanted to scream, to cry, to just break down right then and there, but I refused to give them the satisfaction. I wasn't going to let either of them ruin my day any further. So instead, I took a deep breath, stood up from my seat, and turned to my mother-in-law. My voice was steady, but the anger in it was impossible to miss. "You need to leave too." Her eyes widened. "You have done enough to try and ruin our wedding. You are an embarrassment to have as a mother-in-law, and I don't want to see your face ever again." The color drained from her face before she quickly turned red with anger. She looked around as if expecting someone to come to her rescue, to back her up. Her eyes darted to my father-in-law, then to my husband. Neither of them said a word. Realizing she had no support, she cussed me out and then stormed out of the reception with an angry huff. After she was gone, there was a moment of stunned silence before one by one, people came up to me, telling me that I had done the right thing, that what my mother-in-law had done to us was beyond disrespectful, that she had no rights to interfere in such a personal and painful part of my life by inviting someone that I didn't want there. Now that the wedding is over, my mother-in-law is losing her mind. She's been blowing up our phones with text after text, furious that we humiliated her by kicking her out unceremoniously. She keeps going on and on about how we disrespected her in front of everyone and how she was only trying to do the right thing by bringing my father to the wedding. But the real kicker is that she's demanding that we issue a public apology. That's right, she wants us to apologize. It's almost laughable. My husband and I haven't responded to her yet. Honestly, we don't even know what to say, because no amount of reasoning will make her see that she was the one in the wrong. So, am I an a-hole? Not the a-hole. OP's mother-in-law didn't just cross a boundary, she launched herself over it. She knew OP's history with her dad, knew he was abusive, a thief, a gambler, and still decided to surprise OP with him like some twisted party favor. That "he's your only living parent" speech was pure manipulation. Being biologically related doesn't entitle him to access, especially after everything he did, and him standing there rewriting history like he was a devoted single father. Vomit. OP enforced a clear boundary. She chose to ignore it. That's on her, not OP. And now let's hear community's opinion. Not the a-hole, and please give your husband a medal. So many spouses in these stories fold to butt family, and he literally grabbed the mic and backed you in front of everyone. That's exactly what a partner should do. Your mother-in-law doesn't hate you because you're rude. She hates you because she can't control you. Small wedding? You said no. Grandkids on her schedule? You said no. Public forced reconciliation with your abuser? You said absolutely not. Now she's mad her little power play blew up in her face. The public apology request is hilarious. She should be grateful all she got was an invite to leave. Not the a-hole. OP's mother-in-law is one of those "I'm just trying to fix the family" people who really just want an audience. This wasn't for you. This was for the performance of being the hero who brought father and daughter back together. She blindsided you, handed the man a mic, and let him trauma dump and lie about being some tragic single dad, all on your wedding day. That's not kindness, that's exploitation. She turned your pain into a show. Kicking both of them out was self-defense, not cruelty. Update 1. When I first posted, I was still processing everything and feeling overwhelmed, but reading everyone's responses has made me feel so seen and validated. I've spent years dealing with my father's toxicity and my mother's in-law passive-aggressive behavior, and for the longest time, I felt like maybe I was overreacting or being too harsh. But after hearing from so many of you, I now know that I have been right all along. My mother-in-law is still on her crusade to paint herself as the victim in all of this. She's been calling up every family member, friend, and even some of our wedding guests to tell them how horribly we treated her when all she wanted was to do something good for me and hopefully get my closure with my dad. If at all. She keeps saying that we shamed her in front of everyone on the biggest day of her son's life, and that all she was trying to do was help mend a broken family. Thankfully, most of them aren't buying her soba story and have told her that it wasn't her place to interfere in my life. And as for my father, I did reach out to him long enough to inform him, in no uncertain terms, that if he ever tries to show up in my life again, whether it's at my workplace, my home, or through my husband, I will take legal action against him. I made it clear to him that with his criminal record, it wouldn't be difficult for me to get a restraining order against him. I know how he operates, and I refuse to let him think that he can just waltz back into my life whenever he wants, expecting money or attention. I don't want him back in my life ever. The one person who has truly been my rock through all of this is my husband, Alex. He has been amazing, firm, unwavering, and completely on my side. He told me that his mother's actions were inexcusable and that we owe her nothing. He's now completely refusing to engage with his mom until she apologizes. And honestly, even if she does apologize, I don't know if I can ever look at her the same way again. Update 2. Today, my mother-in-law sent me yet another long-winded text. This time, she went on and on about how she thinks I'm being overdramatic for cutting her off over what she calls a good deed. She claims that she was only trying to help me get closure with my father, and that I'm being crazy and too emotional for reacting the way I did. At this point, I don't even have the energy to be angry anymore. I just feel done. Hence, my husband and I talked, and we have both blocked her now. We don't want an apology anymore. We don't want any fake justification for her actions. We don't want anything from her. We just want her out of our lives. The one good thing is that my husband did talk to my father-in-law about everything, and thankfully he understands our decision. He told us that while he wishes things didn't have to come to this, he respects our choice to cut mother-in-law off, and he won't interfere. Honestly, that's all we needed. Now, we're going to try and focus on us, on our new life together, and on surrounding ourselves with the right people, the ones who actually respect and love us. Update 3. Y'all were right. Mother-in-law did try to show up at our place unannounced. Honestly, I knew she wasn't going to let this go so easily, which is why I took all of your advice and had already installed cameras around our home. And let me tell you, that was the best decision ever. When she showed up, I didn't even bother opening the door. I just sat back and watched through the camera as she completely lost it. She yelled, screamed, banged on the door to make me face her. It was honestly hilarious, like watching a toddler throw a tantrum in the middle of a grocery store because they didn't get the toy they wanted. Except in this case, the toddler was a grown woman acting completely unhinged. I calmly called my husband and father-in-law to let them know what was happening. Father-in-law immediately called mother-in-law and told her to go home. I could hear them arguing through the camera with mother-in-law screaming at him like a lunatic. Eventually, though, she left probably because father-in-law must have warned her that if she kept it up, I wouldn't hesitate to call the police on her. Now my husband is planning to visit his parents after work one last time to make it crystal clear that they are not allowed to come to our home ever again. No calls, no surprise visits, nothing. Hopefully, mother-in-law finally gets the message this time. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if she tries something even more ridiculous next.